Hi there. Today I thought we'd talk about drawing realistic eyes with our pastel pencils. Now, when it comes to capturing the soul of an animal in your art, there's no feature more important than the eyes. I mean, they say the eyes are the windows to the soul, and in animal portraits they truly are. Now, whether you're drawing your beloved pet or a wild animal, getting the eyes just right can make your artwork come alive. So why do the eyes matter? Well, if you're thinking about the first thing you notice when you look at someone, it's often their eyes, right? So the same goes for animals. The eyes convey so much about that animal. Their curiosity, their calmness, whether they're mischief or even that deep soulful gaze that makes you wonder what they're thinking about. So when you nail the eyes in your artwork, you instantly connect the viewer with that subject. It's that moment in your art where it becomes more than just a drawing. It becomes a living, breathing presence on your paper. Now, before you even start drawing, spend a little time studying your reference photo. Notice the shape of the eye, the way the light maybe reflects on the surface, how the colours shift in the iris. One of the biggest secrets to drawing realistic eyes is seeing what's there, not what you think is there. Now, I've said this before, and it may sound obvious, but it is so easy to fall into the trap of drawing what you assume something looks like, rather than what is actually in front of you. So just make sure you have a good look at that reference image. Now, one of the reasons I encourage beginners to use a line art to transfer their image is that it always ensures that you get that proportion and placement of the eyes correct, because the slightest little bit that an eye is out, it really stands out in a drawing. So line art is a great way of getting those proportions right. Now, once you've got your outline down, it's time to start laying down your base colours. Now, the iris usually has a base colour that you'll want to build upon. And you start with this mid-tone colour and you gently layer it in and you follow the shape of the eye. The key is to work lightly and gradually. Pastel pencils are great for adding layers, so there's no need to rush this process. Just build up on your layers and get your colours right for your base. Now, as you add those layers, start introducing some darker shades around the edges of the iris. The darks around the edges is what's going to give you that depth and make that eye look rounded. Think of the iris as a slightly concave surface, and it's darker at the edges and lighter towards the centre, towards the pupil. But variation will depend where the light's hitting the pupil. So again, make sure you're looking at your reference photo for where that light is hitting. Remember, use gentle strokes and move outwards from the pupil. Now, your pupil's the darkest part of the eye, so make sure that you use a nice, rich, deep black pastel to fill that in. You may want to add, again, some tones in there, maybe some blues, or it'll just depend on your reference photo and what you can see within that pupil colour. The contrast against the lighter parts of the iris is what's going to make the eye pop. So remember, don't be afraid of your darks. Now, you've got to leave space for your highlights, the tiny little reflections of light that bring the eye to life. Now, they're crucial. A well-placed highlight can make an eye sparkle, and it can add that lifelike quality that we're all aiming for. So take note of where the light source is coming from in your reference photo and make sure you're placing your highlight accordingly. Sometimes there's more than one highlight, especially if there's more than one light source. Now, you can use a white or a very light pastel pencil, some of your lighter greys, and gently dot or streak these little highlights into the eye. I like to come in right at the end of my drawing with a white charcoal pencil just to really make that light reflection stand out. Now, don't forget the subtle shadows and the colour shifts in the white of the eye as well. Now, this is rarely just flat white. You'll always sort of notice soft shadows. It might be reflecting colours from the surrounding environment. You can use light greys, sometimes blues or soft pinks, and that'll just add a bit of realism to those white areas at the edges of the eye. It's these small details that'll take your drawings from good to great. So just make sure again that you're making reference to that reference photo and just drawing what you're seeing. Now when your base colours and your highlights are in place, it's time to just give those a blend. You can use a blending stump or a cotton bud and gently smooth that transitions in the iris, but be careful not to overblend. You don't want to get that all muddied. You want to keep some of those fine details and those textures intact. Now as you blend, step back every now and again and just assess the overall look of the eye. Are the shadows and the highlights working together to create that depth? Is there enough contrast to make the eye stand out? This is your chance to start tweaking and adjusting everything until it feels right. Now once your blending's done, make sure you've got a nice sharp pencil and go back in for those finer details. This could be adding a few more little highlights, deepening down your shadows around the edges, refining some little tiny lines within the iris. The eyes are full of intricate patterns and subtle sort of colour shifts, so don't be afraid to get in there and add those final touches. Now one thing to remember is that the eye doesn't exist alone. It's part of that whole face. So as you finish the eye, start thinking about how it's going to blend into that surrounding fur or feathers, whatever it is you're drawing. Pay attention to how the fur overlaps slightly with the eye, or how the skin around the eye has its own texture and shading. Be careful to carefully transition from the eye into the surrounding areas, ensuring everything is looking cohesive. You're going to have maybe little hairs coming over the top of the eye and that sort of thing. So just be aware and look at your reference. Now, animal eyes are one of my favourite things to draw, and it does take practice, but it's one of the most rewarding skills that you can develop as an artist. Every time you draw an eye, you'll learn something new about how light and colour and the texture all work together. So don't get discouraged if your first attempts don't turn out exactly as you hoped. Keep practicing, keep observing, and most importantly, just enjoy the process. Now remember, it's those tiny details, those extra few minutes spent refining a highlight or deepening down a shadow that will elevate your drawing. And with time and patience, you'll find that your animal portraits will begin to gaze back at you with a lifelike intensity that draws you in and connects you to the soul of your subject. So I hope this has helped you, and may your next set of eyes be your most captivating yet. See you next time.